Hello and welcome to the Global Hemophilia Report, a podcast at the intersection of science and storytelling. Produced by Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media in partnership with Senior Scientific Advisor Dr. Donna DiMichele, and made possible thanks to our featured advertiser, Sanofi. I'm your host, Patrick James Lynch. The World Federation of Haemophilia is a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving and sustaining care for people with inherited bleeding disorders all around the world. If you've been following this show for any period of time, you have likely heard us talk about the WFH before. The WFH has a vision of treatment for all, for a world where all people with inherited bleeding disorders have access to care, regardless of their type of bleeding disorder, gender, or where they live. The mission of the WFH is to improve and sustain care for people with inherited bleeding disorders all around the world. The organization pursues this in a number of ways and has various programs, meetings, and activities worthy of attention. Today, we are placing a spotlight on what the WFH may be best known for, and that is their biannual World Congress. Held on alternating years at various locations around the globe, World Congress brings together healthcare professionals, patient advocates, researchers, pharmaceutical industry partners, and other stakeholders for several days of learning, networking, and ideas exchange. It is the single largest gathering of the global bleeding disorders community. We're also spotlighting the critical nature of humanitarian aid by speaking with both Assad Haffar, the WFH Humanitarian Aid Director, as well as to Bonnie Anderson, the head of humanitarian aid for rare diseases at Sanofi. These discussions will help deepen the appreciation for the role that humanitarian aid plays in making treatment for all a reality. But first, we'll kick off by speaking with Believe Limited's Director of Engagement and Programs, Amy Board, about her experience at World Congress. That's coming up right after this.
Sanofi seeks to break barriers for people with hemophilia through groundbreaking science so they can live beyond the limitations of their condition. Learn more about Sanofi's commitment at redefininghemophilia.com.
Joining me now is colleague here at Believe Limited, Amy Board. Hi, Amy.
Hello. It's lovely to be here.
It's lovely to be with you. So we were both in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia for the World Federation of Haemophilia's World Congress. Before diving into your experience of the meeting itself, I'm curious to just know what your experience of Kuala Lumpur was. What did you think of Kuala Lumpur?
Well, I thought it was really lovely to be there. And they mentioned multiple times in the meeting that, of course, that was going to be the location during 2020 that got postponed through the COVID pandemic. So it was really lovely to be able to do it. I think my favorite thing, and this was probably maybe your favorite thing too, in the opening session, they played a video that they had made for the meeting in 2020. And I think it was a physician that was speaking about, the importance of the meeting and the importance of, global advocacy. And they had like a little group of young dudes with hemophilia, and they were probably like 9 or something, like, I don't know, 9, 10 in the video. And they were adorable. And they came up and everybody said something. And of course, that was years and years and years ago. And so the physician came out to, kind of address the audience. And then he brought out all of the dudes that are now full-blown teenagers and young adults. It was, to tell you the truth, I was really moved.
Yeah.
And again, it's just, this community, I'm like getting goosebumps about it. And people are at the heart of this. People are at the heart of this. And at the end of the day, that's why we're doing all of this, is to make sure that everyone with hemophilia has the opportunity to make choices like in their life that are not based solely around hemophilia.
Right.
Their lives should not have to be dictated by that. Everybody should have access to treatment and care in order to live a very long, very happy life.
What's your history with the WFH World Congress? And what would you say made this year's experience unique?
The Congress for me, honestly, has been a work location, honestly. The last couple times you and I have been there to facilitate certain things. This was the first time I was there solely as a participant in the sessions. Of course, we had meetings with colleagues, and it was a bit of a shift for me in that, I got to go to many sessions, which I really enjoyed, and was able to kind of immerse myself in the conversations that were happening there, but also to see so many wonderful friends and colleagues that you obviously don't get to see very often. And I didn't really clock that I was going to be able to see so many people that I really have a heart for, that live in other countries across the world. I mean, it was just kind of like, duh. And it really, really filled my cup. Those people are wonderful, and they're doing good work. And it was 100% going to be a highlight of like Q1 for me.
It's on your little vision board.
100%.
Q1 highlights.
Yeah.
So as you just sort of alluded to, there are so many sessions and topics and things that you can attend during the few days. What topics or speakers were you most drawn to, and why?
Yeah, the thing that I was most interested in, that they spoke about multiple times in multiple sessions in particular, was not only new therapies, but really zeroing in on rebalancing agents and surgery, minor surgery and major surgery. And the reason that I was so interested in it is because I do think it's still a very complex conversation for HCPs. One of the things that was very clear is that we are now in a world with this paradigm shift that our health providers are in a position to make really complex decisions about not only, I think treatment options for patient to patient, but also, some of these more complex situations. An inhibitor with minor surgery, a low titer inhibitor with major surgery. Those types of things were really interesting to me. And with rebalancing agents, there isn't a lot of data about that. One of the things that I was most intrigued to see was Dr. Young was there. We know Dr. Guy Young. He's been on the program here, the podcast, many times. He's been on Bloodstream as well many times. And he prefaced his talk with very firm that this was his opinion. These are just some of his opinions. He wasn't speaking from any data per se, because we don't have any data. And so the majority of what his talk was about, thinking about surgery, major surgery in particular, when you are on a rebalancing agent, is what you have from the prescribing information, which is vague at best. And so it's obviously a continuing conversation. We talked a lot about, minor surgeries. We talked a lot about like major surgeries. We talked a lot about EMI in particular, and EMI seems to be really figured out. Especially with inhibitors, it really seems to be figured out when it comes to surgery. It's demonstrated high outcomes and safety and really elevated consistency. That was very much said across the board. Rebalancing agents, though, are not enough as single agents for major surgery.
Sure. And
anyway, I just thought it was really interesting to go through the prescribing information, because that's all we have. Now, I know this is like a continuing conversation, but I think I just think it's something to consider, with these new drugs. And for me, it was really fascinating. One of the things from a patient perspective, one of the things that was mentioned, if you don't follow the breakthrough bleeding guidance, you can really get into trouble when you're on these rebalancing agents. So, again, this is a shift. Not only is it a treatment paradigm shift, but it's really a shift in terms of how we manage our bodies, how we understand what's going on. I could imagine bleeds might feel a bit different with some of these medications. I, of course, do not have hemophilia. I should just, state that here. I'm not a physician either. So this is just something that I'm very interested in, and I think it raises really interesting questions. Anyway, that was what I was most interested in, was that kind of world. There was also a fascinating session about AI in hemophilia in particular. And, you've been interested in AI, just kind of like around the realm with hemophilia. And it's not that I haven't been, I just haven't been kind of like pushed into it. And it was a really interesting question about how we can utilize this in comprehensive care, in diagnostic care, that I thought was really interesting. There are some limitations, but I think one of the things that I thought was most encouraging could be like a multilingual tool, especially for patients and for healthcare providers, and really understanding their diagnosis and really understanding what the treatment options are. So I thought that was interesting.
And Cedric Hermans, I think we're going to have, who presented in that session. I think our intention is to have him here on Global Hemophilia Report before the end of the year for that very topic. So nice little teaser for that. In general, how would you say this year's World Congress influenced the way that you think about the global bleeding disorders community?
I think there's just so much room that we have left to do. I just think there's so much work that we have to do to make everyone who has hemophilia, to make sure that they have treatment at the time that they really need it, and options. I think it's still really unbalanced in terms of like what everyone's discussing and what is happening in some pockets of the world. It's not a conversation for all. I feel like some of these conversations that I was in, these sessions that I were in, were physicians really trying to push into that we need more data about certain things, and then there are a swath of people that are still looking for diagnostic care, looking for just like basic treatment in order to sustain someone's life when they're 6 or 7 years old. So it was there. It was there. I wish I had something more eloquent to say, but it still feels unbalanced. And everyone is so passionate about it. I know we're like working towards that. That's just the way our world is at the moment. It's the way our systems work at the moment, but it's still there.
Well, kind of along those lines, I think you've kind of answered this question already, but one point that really stood out to me was this idea that while we're making advancements in drugs and therapies and care practices conceptually, there are gaps around the world that are growing, not closing. Did you hear similar messaging? And from an advocate's point of view, if that is the case, how do we change that trend?
I'm not sure. There's a piece of me that really thinks it's financial, and somebody having the courage to put more priority on equality around the world rather than profit margins in some way. I think some of the, this is just from my own little seat, I think some of the treatments here that aren't necessarily working here in the States or in Germany or in the UK, that patients aren't necessarily being drawn to, would be life-changing for someone in another environment, another socioeconomic reality. And what would that look like if that was available to them, if there was some type of access? It just doesn't seem possible from a financial standpoint. I just don't know how that could happen from a financial standpoint, but it seems like that's the issue,
Yeah.
Money.
Well, other than erasing money from the equation, if there was one thing, let's say you have that metaphorical magic wand,
yeah,
you wave it and you can change one thing about the WFH World Congress, maybe even ahead of the 2028 meeting in Chicago, where we'll be far less jet lagged. What would you change and why?
I would love to hear more from the community and the patients in a way that would feel accessible, in particular to the clinical realm. I think that is always sometimes missing from, kind of that clinical mind of what are the realities of living with a bleeding disorder. What are the realities of decision-making? What are the realities of being a teenager? What are the realities of being a caretaker? And to kind of, have that be more a part of the overall conversation. It does seem siloed in some ways. It does seem like there's, clinicians, conversations, and then there's, patients and advocates conversations. And I do know they intermingle and swap, and it's definitely something that is prioritized, but some innovation there to really bring home like the storytelling of the actual people specifically for those clinicians. It's just a rare opportunity for clinicians to be in a room like that all together, and to have that, humanizing element might shift something in someone that has the ability to make decisions that would really create profound change.
For sure. All right. Well, there you have it, WFH. There's Amy's magic wand for 2028.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. And thanks for having me here.
Next, I speak with WFH Humanitarian Aid Director Assad Haffar right after this.
Sanofi through Foundation S is a founding visionary contributor along with Sobi to the World Federation of Hemophilia's Humanitarian Aid Program. Since 2014, Sanofi has donated more than 1 billion international units of therapy to the program, supporting over 22,000 people with hemophilia across more than 50 countries. Sanofi's recent trip to Armenia with the WFH, including VP and Head of Global Public Affairs Scott Williams and representatives from Sobi, embodies Sanofi's proud commitment to supporting countries like Armenia in their journey towards patient-centered excellence.
Before diving into discussion about this year's World Congress and the Humanitarian Aid Program in particular, I asked Assad to introduce himself and share a bit of how he first got involved with the WFH.
My name is Assad Haffar, and I am the Director of the Humanitarian Aid and Medical Training at the World Federation of Haemophilia. I've been with the World Federation of Haemophilia for the last 26 years. I am in fact a physician, and my specialty is occupational medicine. So in the early years of my practice, I worked with workers. And workers is vulnerable group in the society, because usually, particularly in developing countries, because they work in not very healthy situations, under extreme conditions, exposed to a lot of harmful agents in their work environment. So that attracted me to what I would call vulnerable groups. And medicine was originally designed to help restore the health of people. But not only the rich people who can afford the medical knowledge, but it should be also goes to the people who cannot access the medical treatment and all that. And then I came across the World Federation of Haemophilia. And I found that the hemophilia community is really like the vulnerable group I just mentioned, workers. Because in the developing world, most of the hemophilia patients do not have access to treatment, and even they don't have access to diagnosis. And I found that I will be really making a difference there by helping in diagnosing new patients and finding treatment for the people who are really diagnosed.
I asked Assad for his recollection of the first ever WFH World Congress that he attended.
The first World Congress I attended was in 2002 in Seville, Spain. And it was really a big experience to me, because at that time also we had what we call NMO training, which was before the Congress. And the NMO is the national member organizations, where we usually bring our national member organization into 2 days or 2.5 days closed meeting to discuss with them different issues related to advocacy, treatment, how to run a successful hemophilia society, and how to have good governance of the society. So having participated in this was really great. But then when we went from the NMO to the Congress itself, it was also beyond my imagination of a World Congress for Bleeding Disorders, because we had more than maybe 3,000 people attending the Congress in Seville at that time, with a lot of tracts, a lot of new topics, and a lot of things that were quite interesting for me. So it was really a big experience for me between these two major events that I attended at that time.
And of course, there have been some major evolutions that have taken place in the 24 years since Assad's First World Congress.
I would say the biggest evolution is the new, or what we call novel therapies and novel treatments. And also the change of the threats and challenges that was facing the hemophilia community between 2026 and between 2002 and 2026. So at that time, the only possible treatment was available for the hemophilia community was factor concentrates, either the regular factor 8, factor 9, or other factor deficiencies, and the bypassing agents. Today, we have novel therapies, we have gene therapy, we have the bispecific antibodies, we have the rebalancing agent, and all that. So there was really a big change in the treatment that was available for the hemophilia community between 2002 and 2026. Having said that, there was something that didn't change between 2026, between 2002 and 2026, which is the challenge that the hemophilia community in developing countries facing, because they're still facing not enough diagnosis and not enough treatment, which we are trying our best at the WFH to help bridge this gap between what is identified and what is expected, and how to make the hemophilia community in the developing countries access more treatment.
I asked Assad, from his perspective, what made this year's meeting unique or distinctive?
The 2026 was unique because it was quite far, let's say. That part of the world, usually it's difficult for people to access, particularly in the current international environment and all that. So I was quite surprised that we had a big number of participants from that region, from that part of the world. So we had a big number of participants from Malaysia itself and from neighboring countries, particularly some countries that we would call they are emerging countries, like Philippines, like Indonesia, like Vietnam, like Cambodia. All these countries, Myanmar, there were a big number of participants that were represented there. And that really made a big difference, because we felt that we were right in going to that part of the world for the World Congress, because it gave the opportunity for these participants to participate in the World Congress, which wouldn't have happened if the Congress was, let's say, in Western Europe or in North America, because it would have been very difficult for them to attend. So this is one part was really struck me, and I was quite pleased to see this. And the second thing also that I noticed is the variety of the topics that we had. The program was really diversified between the treatment, the diagnosis, but also new, let's say, topic that we started to talk a lot about it, which is women and girls with bleeding disorders. There were a lot also of topics related to this particular area.
In addition, Assad was part of a presentation featuring updates from the Humanitarian Aid program.
We had a session on update on our humanitarian aid donations. The session comprised presentations, first of all, by the WFH on the current situation of the humanitarian aid program, the current key performance indicators of the program, like number of patients benefited, number of units or milligrams donated, and all that. But also, we had two other parts that were very important. First of all, we had a part of it related to actual opinion from the floor or from the countries. So we had the patients who had bilateral knee replacement using the donated product to speak about his situation before and after these two operations. We had the doctors from Myanmar who also spoke about how the donations helped her in following patients with, or putting some patients on prophylaxis and following them up after that. And also we had a presentation from a Ministry of Health representative from Morocco who spoke how the donations help them to better understand the situation in their country and increase their support and investment in hemophilia care in the country in general. And lastly, we had also a portion related to participation from our visionary partners from industry. So we had a representative from Sanofi, Sobi, Roche, CSL, and Bayer, who spoke about their role and how they are convinced that donating to the WFH and the WFH humanitarian program will give also more access to the patients in need in developing countries.
In just a few minutes, you'll hear from a representative of one of those visionary partners, Sanofi. But first, I was curious to know from Assad what makes for a great industry partner to the Humanitarian Aid program.
Since the expansion of our program in the year 2015, which started by a big donation from our the founder or the founding visionary partners, which are Sanofi, Sobi, we started to get more donations from different industry partners. The best thing of this is with this expanded program, we get now bigger amount of factor concentrates or milligrams of the bypassing agents like emicizumab. What is more important, we get longer shelf life from these donors, and also another very important point, which is we signed with them multi-year agreement, and usually the period is 5 years. So now, if we talk about Sanofi Sobi, we so far have with them 3 contracts, one after another. With Roche is the same. With CSL, we are in the second, and we hope that we're going to go for the third. The same with let's say with Bayer. So for us, the most important for these contracts, including, of course, the other partners that they are giving us, like Takeda and Grifols, we find that there are 3 major specifics related to that. The first one is more concentrates or more products coming to us. It's a multi-year agreement. The duration or the shelf life of the product is longer, and we know exactly when the product is arriving to us. So we have now some sort of planning when we are going to get the product. And this helps us to plan specific treatment modalities with the treaters at the other end or at the recipient countries. Either if they have surgeries planned to be done using the humanitarian aid donations, then they can exactly know when they can ask the patients to come to the hospital, prepare for him the prothese, if we are talking about joint replacement, for example. And at the same time, they know how much they are going to get from us per year, so they can plan also some prophylactic programs to put children under the age of 5 on prophylactic treatment.
My last question for Assad was, during the 2028 World Congress in Chicago, what type of progress do you hope the humanitarian aid program can report on then?
In fact, one major step that we are working towards, as you know, most of the product, or there are now some sort of shortage in factor 9 around the world, particularly of the factor 9 coming to us as a humanitarian aid donation, which put a lot of pressure on the hemophilia B community around the world. In the past, we used to have more factor 9, but now there is shortage, international or global shortage in factor 9. So the hemophilia B community is getting less donation from our side. And we see this increasing and increasing. So many countries that used to have patients on prophylaxis with donated factor 9, they are not now able to do this. So we hope that we are going to, for the 2028 Congress, we hope that we are going to get more factor 9 to cover this area, or even start having donations of the new rebalancing agents that are in the market that can be given to the hemophilia B community with inhibitors and without inhibitors.
We'll be right back with Sanofi's Bonnie Anderson.
Sanofi, through Foundation S, is a founding visionary contributor, along with Sobi, to the World Federation of Hemophilia's Humanitarian Aid Program. Since 2014, Sanofi has donated more than 1 billion international units of therapy to the program, supporting over 22,000 people with hemophilia across more than 50 countries. Sanofi's recent trip to Armenia with the WFH, including VP and Head of Global Public Affairs Scott Williams and representatives from Sobi, embodies Sanofi's proud commitment to supporting countries like Armenia in their journey towards patient-centered excellence.
My name is Bonnie Anderson. I have been with Sanofi for 21 years and have had the real privilege of leading the humanitarian program for the past 13 years. So it's really a wonderful program that I'm so happy to chat with you about today.
So, big question to kick off, but from your point of view, how would you describe Sanofi's commitment to humanitarian aid in the hemophilia space?
So, as I mentioned, I've been here for 21 years. And when I first was exposed to the hemophilia program, which was now back in 2018, I was really shocked by the numbers. 75% of people with hemophilia around the world didn't have access to care. And, Sanofi came to this with a very long history of supporting humanitarian programs. So our rare humanitarian program actually is celebrating 35 years this year. So we are so proud that we were able to bring the hemophilia patient community into that commitment. And it's something that we're really just proud of. I know it sounds a little corny, but we really believe it's the right thing to do. As a company, we chase the miracles of science to improve patient lives, but it's more than that. It's about bringing that access to patients around the world, regardless of their ability to pay. So it's simple, it's the right thing to do, and our commitment is very longstanding and something that we're all very proud of.
Well, it's a simple idea, but certainly not easy in execution. And Sanofi has had a unique role in helping expand the World Federation of Hemophilia's humanitarian aid program with that 1 billion unit commitment that was made by Sanofi and Sobi now over a decade ago. And then just last year, another 500 million units were committed to the program. So can you tell us about Sanofi's legacy in humanitarian aid? You've already started to touch on it, but more specifically, why does being a leader in this way matter to Sanofi?
It's a great question, Patrick. And I think, as I said, it seems so simple, but as you mentioned, operationally, it's very challenging. But it matters. It matters to patients. It matters to families, and it matters to us. It matters to the community. And, again, 35 years in our rare space, 12 years now together with SOBI, with the World Federation of Hemophilia's Humanitarian Aid Program. And it's something that is very powerful, right? It's at the core of what we do. It motivates us. It inspires us. We learn so much from the work that we do in the humanitarian space. And it's about being there for patients, again, regardless of where they are, overcoming the challenges and doing everything that we can. It's more, though, than just about a donation, right? Access is one component, and those, shipments of product are so important, but it's also about building an ecosystem, creating something together with, in this case, the World Federation of Hemophilia and with SOBI and with the whole patient community to be able to have something that is sustainable, to not just treat patients of today, patients of tomorrow as well. And it's something that we don't take lightly. It's really at the core of what we do, and being able to recommit again after that 1 billion donation to the World Federation of Hemophilia's program was something that we were all so proud of. We were excited to be there together in Dubai last year at the WFH meeting and sign those papers, but it was about our commitment and our ongoing commitment, because it matters. It matters to those patients and families and to the community.
Certainly. And Believe Limited has seen that firsthand, traveling with the World Federation for the last decade, capturing stories of what life looks like now that product is available, and children can be on prophylaxis, or adults can have non-emergency corrective surgeries, and people's lives just being fundamentally changed. How do you personally interact with Sanofi's humanitarian aid activities? Are there any experiences or moments that have been particularly meaningful to you?
Yeah, so every day is a little bit different, right? We're always trying to work to solve problems or challenges or see, again, how we can do better to support more patients. But I've had the real privilege of being on the ground with Believe as well in different countries to meet the people who are benefiting from the program and benefiting from that access to treatment. And it's hard to describe, it's an emotional response often. You're there and you're meeting the people who are impacted by this. You feel their gratitude. You listen to their stories. And I know for me, my first time was in Kenya back in 2019, I believe, and meeting this mother named Judy, and her talking about her son Stephen, and he had a scar on his forehead, and she said that's how we learned he had hemophilia. He had fallen, and that's when they first got diagnosed. And she said people ask her all the time about why not fix the scar, and she said it's a reminder, it's a way to educate. And I thought, gosh, what strength they have, and how can we help support them? Or, just listening and hearing their stories. And I know another time last year in Sri Lanka, listening to mothers share their fear about letting their child play outside because they didn't always have access to treatment, but now them feeling confident to let their son run and play with his siblings or friends. And then seeing, what I also love is seeing, again, that impact, meeting different generations of patients. So seeing, the older patients and seeing some of the challenges that they have physically or, even mentally as well, that they've had to overcome. And now seeing the younger generation who has had access to prophylaxis treatment or, again, that more sustainable, confident supply that they have. So being able to live life differently, right? Not letting it hold them back, not letting them have to deal with so many challenges later. So I'm so proud of that impact that we've been able to do collectively, as a community, to really change lives of the hemophilia community in a sustainable, meaningful way.
You mentioned how it's the right thing to do, which is a beautiful ethos to operate from. But supporting humanitarian aid isn't just nice, it's also good for business. There is a business benefit to these humanitarian activities. Can you describe the business benefit and why a company like Sanofi would be so invested in humanitarian aid?
Yeah, absolutely. It is certainly the right thing to do, and we definitely believe that it's part of our mission and really at its core. But there are benefits to it, of course, right? Number one, we learn a lot. We learn about the different diseases that we're treating in the humanitarian space that we sometimes don't see those characteristics of the disease in, more of the populations that are having the commercial access as well, different challenges that they face. So it's a lot of learning, but it's a lot of also just gaining that experience with physicians. It's helping build something sustainable, but it's good. It's good for us to do. It's motivating for employees. It's a way that we also attract a lot of talent that once we say that we're committed to this, it's amazing how many people say, I want to work for a company that is committed to patients, not just in certain countries, but truly around the world. But it's a collective approach. I think it's also great for partnerships, right? Learning to work together. Collaboration is so important. We can do so much more when we work together. And I do think the humanitarian aid programs are really where we see all of these different stakeholders coming together to help move something forward in a sustainable way. I know I say sustainable a lot, but that is true, right? When you're trying to make change, it takes time. And so being there for 10 plus years is a way that we are able to demonstrate our commitment in helping move things forward.
So Bonnie, last question from me. If there's one thing that you would like the broader hemophilia community to know about or appreciate about Sanofi's humanitarian aid commitment, what would that be?
So I think for us, the humanitarian programs are meaningful to us. It's at its core. And I like to say it's in our DNA. It's in our DNA to do humanitarian programs, to really build those partnerships. But simply stating, it's the right thing to do. We believe in it, and it's in our DNA.
For sure. Well, thank you, Bonnie Anderson. I so appreciate your time. Appreciate you joining me here for the Global Hemophilia Report.
Thank you, Patrick. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you, Amy, Assad, and Bonnie for contributing to this episode of the Global Hemophilia Report. I appreciated how these 3 one-on-one conversations provided insights into the WFH World Congress and the role of the humanitarian aid program in particular. 3 quick takeaways from me as we wrap up. World Congress and novel therapies. Interestingly, both Amy and Assad touched on how novel therapies and novel therapy education is a major component of what takes place at World Congress. This makes sense and would be a good reason the meeting would continue to see strong attendance in years to come, especially in the region of the meeting itself. Number 2, supporting humanitarian aid provides unique learning into the disease state, as well as into the systems of treatment and care delivery. Those learnings can help create access pathways and relationships to key stakeholders, advocates, HCPs, government officials, and this can lead to direct commercial benefit in the long term. And lastly, Assad highlighted a shortage in Factor IX product donations, putting pressure on patients and families impacted by hemophilia B around the world. For all the excitement associated with novel therapies, treatment for all will never be a reality if we don't continue to address fundamental needs, such as that for greater supply of Factor IX concentrate around the world. That will do it here for this episode of the Global Hemophilia Report. I'd like to again thank Amy, Assad, and Bonnie for contributing to today's episode. Thanks as well to producers Keith Korneluk and David Zah, to editor Japneet Dhaliwal, to our senior scientific advisor Dr. Donna DiMichele, and thank you to our featured advertiser, Sanofi. Please share this episode and subscribe to the Global Hemophilia Report to have the next episode delivered to you the moment it goes live. My name is Patrick James Lynch. Thank you for listening, and until next time.
Sanofi is committed to bringing new perspectives and bold innovations to the global hemophilia community. Learn more about how Sanofi is committed to breaking barriers and supporting the community at redefininghemophilia.com.